I know. Well, he had
All right, folks. Hope everyone had enough coffee, and we'll call the meeting back to order. This is the opportunity for public input. This is the Strategic Initiatives Committee budget meeting. This is one of two we've held so far. The next budget meeting may be Monday, and no decisions tonight are final. Any committee decision can be revisited, and the budget will come before council. First opportunity will be the meeting of March 25th, and if it passes then, it will incorporate recommendations that are carried forward from the last SIC meeting. And if it's not, then it can be re-examined and amended or changed at that meeting. So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. We have now the live mic session, but I thought before we got into the live mic session, just in a quick number of discussions, I know many of you are here about the Third and High intersection. We did have a report from staff to give a brief history on how we got to where we are today. And so I'm going to ask Director Farrar and Director McDonald to come up and do a brief review of that presentation, so those that missed it the first time will have an opportunity. And it is in hard copy, and there are hard copies, I believe, at the front. If there are not any more there, then just please let us know, and will we be posting that online? We'll be posting that online as well. This meeting is being live streamed, so you can watch the presentation from before online as well. Nancy and Brian, welcome again, and thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we did find one more slide, but what we'll do is we'll have a quick run through of the the presentation that we gave earlier. And I guess I don't know, Mayor Saunderson, we've got the slides up. We're not going to run through the slides, we're just going to have a quick verbal run through, or how would you like me to handle this?
If you're able to run through the slides, that would be great, please.
Okay.
Just very quickly, and you don't have to address each one, you can pick the highlights.
Okay. Highlights and the context. The official plan sets out the long-term planning framework for the community. Our 2000 official plan, it has a time frame of 2021 and a population of 30,300. There was significant public input, and residents and developers make their purchasing decisions and their land use decisions based on the OP policies. We're going to do this very quickly. It was a comprehensive plan that was prepared for what we're referring to as the Regional Commercial District. This was in about 2007, and it included what infrastructure would be required in order to put that plan into place. And the municipality has entered into agreements with the landowners based on the infrastructure needs that were identified. Collector Road. A collector road or a distributor road is a low to moderate capacity road which serves to move traffic from local streets to arterial roads. Unlike arterial roads, collector roads are designed to provide access to residential properties. Collector roads can vary widely in appearance. Some are urban collectors with wide boulevards, and others are, okay, let's go over the page. Others are residential streets, which are typically wider than local roads, although few are as wider than 4 lanes. Small-scale commercial areas can be found on collector roads in residential areas, and key community functions such as schools, churches, and recreation facilities can often be found on collector roads. Here's a map of the town from the 1880s, and we'll go to the next one. The next one shows that in the 1880s, even the Ontario 3rd Street corridor was identified as one of the main through corridors through town at that point in time. From the 3rd and High perspective, there's a site plan agreement that allowed Home Depot. That was signed in August of 2006. The agreement includes securities to cover the cost of removing the existing signalization and installing new signals at 3rd and High Street. So that's something that's been in that agreement for many years. As far as the Regional Commercial District, what we do have is we're showing you that we had a major official plan review, the notice for the public meeting, which was October 25th, 2007. And next, The public meeting showed that there was a connection between Cambridge and 3rd Street. This is straight out of our presentation at that public meeting. Next, here is the official plan schedules. It's Schedule D out of the official plan, and it shows the link between Cambridge and 3rd being part of our plan. And collector roads are, sorry, yes, thank you, Brian. It also shows all the collector roads going through residential areas on Schedule D. This is part of our official plan policies that was put in place as part of OPA 10. The development of the Home Depot property will include the extension of Cambridge Street to the southern property boundary. And the other policy was the development of 3rd Street property will include the extension of 3rd West to meet Cambridge. So those are policies that are in our current official plan. Next we talked about a class environmental assessment that was done in 2007. There were 3 public information sessions for this Class EA, and the study limit was High Street. The class environmental assessment showed the intersection, and it also showed a 5-lane cross-section, and the traffic signals at that point in time. Next we have the transportation plan. The town regularly does transportation studies. This transportation study was 2012. It showed the 2020 conditions, and it showed that this intersection would be at level of service F, which is poor. The next applications that we dealt with, because we had already talked about the official plan for the regional commercial district, we had a public meeting for the proposed plan of subdivision and the zoning bylaw for the regional commercial district, and that was held on July 20th, 2015. At that time, there wasn't any comments received about the 3rd and High Street intersection. Here we have the draft plan of subdivision that shows what's the proposal is. I'm sorry, I admit it's difficult to see. Oh, and the other thing we found, the next slide, which is the proposed connection. We found this, we threw it in. This is the connection that I think was asked for, that we didn't have. Anyway, so there's that. And that's a very quick run-through of the history of the project. I think we've got official plan, we've got zoning bylaw, we've got plan of subdivision, we have site plan agreements that have all been put in place, and I'll leave it at that and let anybody else.
Certainly, in terms of this connection here, the comment with respect to it, our transportation study in 2012 suggested that this connection, although it's not necessary in the scope of the study, it was recommended and prudent to protect the corridor for a future possibility. So the intent at this point in time is to protect that corridor. There is no intention to provide this crossing. The crossing would be part of or subject to future official plan amendments and public meetings. We're just protecting the corridor at this time, should it be necessary. There's a lot of factors that come into play, whether this is necessary or not, whether we get a bypass, whether we the capacity of First and High. There's a whole bunch of factors. So this is long into the future, but in the transportation study it said it would be prudent to preserve the corridor. So this plan is in place, but it's not, the connection is not being proposed at any time in the near future.
Thank you very much, Director McDonald, Nancy Farrar, Director Farrar. So we're now at our public portion of the meeting. This is a Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting, so you can come up and talk about any aspect of the budget that you would like, and there is a maximum of 10 minutes. And when you come up, please state your name and your address, and put your name on the sign-in sheet just off to your right there, please. You can do that after you've... Welcome, Matthew.
Hi there. Been here for a good hour, so I thought I'd do this as fast as possible. I'm a resident in the east end of Collingwood, 40 years old. I've been attending council for since the late 90s, And my favorite thing about town council is the committee meetings. I think the committee meetings have provided, like tonight, this would have been a special meeting, it would have not been a committee meeting, and now that we have committee meetings, it allows for discussion to commence, and I think some of the councillors, Councillor Hamlin in specific, she's taking advantage of the committee meeting opportunity, and I think that's wise. And I think at the same time, the opportunity for the public to speak as well at committee. The audience tonight is full house, and that's amazing. Obviously homeowners in the town. The town has gone through some bumps. Ian Adams is here from the paper. The Enterprise Bulletin was cancelled in 2017, unfortunately.
And it's always great to have you.
Yeah.
Can you, on the budget, can we stick on the budget?
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Good.
I think, you know, there's really nothing to be said. I've been to this before. I think the main thing is safety. Safety in the town. The new LED lights that were done last year are okay. They're a bit dull, if you ask me. Regarding the budget, okay, two things. I'll just keep it at two. Please consider the planning proposals of new developments in a progressive manner, because the demand of the town will increase. So I think during the future, with this budget, we're dealing with an active budget. This isn't just today or tomorrow. This is for, is it 1 year? 1 year, right? Yeah, it's like 2019?
Yes.
2019. Okay, so this is an ongoing thing. We need to carefully consider the proposals. Obviously, the housing crisis has come up, or it's not a crisis. There's always this nonsense about crisis. It's a demand. It's a demand. Let's just slow down and think about these proposals, and let's try and engage with engineering and requests for sidewalks, for example, the 6th Street proposal and other proposals, and then this road lengthening to the west side of town. I know that scares a lot of people. I can see the reaction in the audience. I'm scared too for people that are driving too fast on First. I'm going to petition the MTO this year regarding the pedestrian crosswalk policy, and just kind of move alongside with council and see where they're at too, MTO wise, regarding our pedestrian crosswalk needs and safety, because, you know, running across 6 lanes of traffic is not a good idea for anyone on First. If you're trying to get to the water, I wouldn't recommend it. It's extremely dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. This must be realized. And the other thing, number 2, we should engage and invite people to enjoy the parks. And last year there was some barbecues installed down at the water. That's fantastic. The Parks Department does a great job in cleanups. I know Elvis Festival's coming up again, and they've always done a relatively good job with the cleanups. I'm not sure what's going to happen after this year, but it's been a good event, the town festival, and it's, you know, celebrating the historic and unique side and inviting people to the water. I'm pretty much on board with what council's doing so far. I just think at the end of the day, let's slow down and discuss as a council during committee and get the questions out of the way, so that when council comes along on the 2 days per month, we can make some decisions that are progressive. Because, you know, there's a demand, and people are expecting the opportunity to move up here and live up here and be part of the community and all this great stuff. So let's just remember that. Like Martin Ridlow said on the radio the other day, brilliant guy. He says, tech and tourism and Collingwood is a part of a 75,000 member community that includes the surrounding area. And that's true. It's not a little 18,000 person community anymore. We're talking big numbers. So let's get on board with progress, and let's take our time, and let's invite and accept what is coming in relation to Councillor Doherty and Councillor Hamlin's concern about trees, buffer lines. Well said, ladies, because we know trees are being cut on Mountain and other places, and well said, you know, to protect and preserve areas where trees are, and to give developers the sense that you mean business and you have standards. So you know, that's a value for sure. Anyways, I'm heading home. Thank you so much, and I look forward to participating in the community this year and onwards. So thanks a lot, and that's it.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, an opportunity for another member of the community.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name's Andrew Hill. I live at 208 Birch Street, which is just about 3 doors south of the intersection of 3rd and Birch. And thank you for the history of the 3rd Street extent, the Cambridge Street connection and the traffic signal. And I wrote an email to council 2 days ago about my concerns about this work that's pending, and just going back to the history that was presented. Thank you for that again. I was not a resident of Collingwood back in 2007, so I had no knowledge of the official plan content about the Cambridge Street extension at that time, and with the approvals that happened after that date between 2007 and today, I wouldn't have been circulated on what happened, what was being proposed there. So I had no knowledge of it until just a few days ago. And that's my concern, is that I had no knowledge of it, and now there's a proposal that I believe is almost fully approved now that's going to vastly increase the amount of traffic that's going to go down 3rd Street. And myself, as a resident, along with a number of other people in this room, have a great concern about that. And I think that there should be more traffic engineering analysis to determine what the real impacts of these improvements that are being proposed are going to have on our neighborhood. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Hi, my name's Colin Wills. I don't live down anywhere near 3rd Street. I was at the 2007 public meeting. I was at that meeting. I was at the 2015 public meeting as well, where this the roundabout and the lights and everything were all basically in the official plan at that time. And at the time, I think I was at the 2015 meeting. Nobody got up and said a word at that time. I think that if people are here because they didn't realise that that was part of the official plan, they shouldn't be looking to council. They should be looking at their real estate agents and the other people that originally sold them their properties. Because this is all the time, like all the time I've lived here, or since 2007, I've known that that was part of the official plan and that was what was going to happen there. If this doesn't go ahead, if this development doesn't go ahead and we don't put these lights in and that stops, we're going to be sending a very, very bad message to developers in this town, and we're going to, the council and official plans and everything mean nothing. And I think that this is part of the official plan. A lot of people have come here after the fact and they're trying to change things after the fact, and I don't think that that's right. So anyway, that's what I think.
Thank you.
Mr. Wills has inspired me.
Good evening, Council. My name is Anita Pompilio. I'm a new resident to 172 Walnut, which is 1 door in from Walnut and 3rd. I have the romantic ability to walk to work, and I work at Huron, Ontario and 3rd. I have had, in the 11 months that I've been walking, 5 close calls with vehicles, and I don't wear headphones. If I was not a defensive walker, I would have been hit 5 separate times. I've also been right at an intersection for a T-boning. It's not a pleasant walk. The suggestions that the upgrades to 3rd Street would include making it similar to the section between Pine and Maple is wonderful, except the town already struggles with enough parking for the businesses and the churches. We now have fire trucks ripping down Third Street in a hurry, as they should be. However, we need more stop signs at the intersections to slow the traffic down and cut down on the impact. You know, we all know that there was a child who was hit in an intersection crossing properly, but we have a lot of children that walk along our neighborhood to Mountain View, which is the big school, and they don't even have a sidewalk on one side of Third. All these enhancements are gonna be great. They're gonna make it possible for our children to walk safer to school and to the pool and to the skate park and all those things. But not if we're adding all these additional vehicles and people parked on the side of the road, forcing out people to be trying to cross streets when they have obstructed views. So from that standpoint, I'm a little concerned. Staff have defined collector roads and suggested that a collector road is not an arterial. However, if we're looking at this much traffic diversion, we're now gonna make Third Street into an arterial roadway, which is gonna impact at here, Ontario, where we have this beautiful heritage streetscape. Where are those cars gonna turn? That intersection at here, Ontario and Third is already difficult to cross. So I think, again, we're gonna be impacting it that way. Sorry, and I'm going back to my technical notes, taking a page from the kids. As far as I understand that the $3 million is not actually our tax money, that it's development money that's been sitting, and that's what's being debated, is releasing that. My concern is what the infrastructure costs are gonna be to upgrade Third Street, to widen the roads, put in sidewalks. There are blocks that don't have sufficient street lighting, so we're looking at all of that. And if you look at my end of town, the current existing hydro poles are very close to the road. I would suspect that we're gonna involve moving hydro as well. And in order, you know, it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse by putting a light and then, oh boy, now we need to upgrade Third Street. If we're gonna have all this extra traffic, we're gonna need the roads to be improved dramatically because they're not safe to travel more than 30 kilometers an hour at this point. People driving faster are hitting all the ruts, they're swerving, it's not a safe roadway. So I would respectfully suggest that we need to look at those improvements and the costs before we approve putting in the light. And just on a last thing, if this light has to happen, perhaps the next best thing is to make it no through traffic coming off Cambridge on the Third. You must go left or right at High. And that's my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tim Fryer, 75 Georgia Manor Drive. Mayor Saunderson, Deputy Mayor Hull, and council members, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you during your budget deliberations. Major component of the draft budget detail that prompted me to want to speak to you is the proposed tax impact mitigation provided as part of the net unavoidable increases. The detail in the supplementary budget information first caught my attention because of the two large debit items under general government. At first, I thought it was accounting for the 2018 unfunded expenditure, but I believe that the $1,431,000 mitigation measure is a credit impact. That cleared up some of my initial confusion, but still left the question of why that particular amount is proposed, maybe also what reserve is being used, and why is the significant tax impact mitigation incorporated into net unavoidable increases. It is appropriate to incorporate the major $1.5 million extraordinary expenditure, but there should be discussion of the funding of it. A component of what should be discussed is who is paying for that particular expense. I recognize that in most cases, it is all out of the taxpayer's pocket, but as Director Leonard discussed with you the other day about users paying for capital assets, there are past, current, and future taxpayers contributing. Which is the appropriate one for this case? I noted back in January and with my comments to you in February that the first priority of the use of COLA's sales proceeds should be to include ensuring all reserves are at the top levels. Also noted that a driver for my interest for this was from some outstanding questions from last October, specifically about why estimated sales proceeds appeared to be quite a bit lower than what was indicated by the 2017 college statements. Definitely that uncertainty was alleviated with Council's announcement on Tuesday of in excess of 17 million in gross proceeds. As an aside, this outcome pushes the overall gross proceeds of the two-stage asset divestiture into the very solid range of 33 million. I refer back to this when raising that there is a budget issue of determining who should be paying, because it really just could be all semantics if Council chooses either to top up reserves or to net all inquiry-related costs against proceeds rather than just the ones it has. Basically, either choice would mean the electricity ratepayer is the payer, which to some degree is not the Collingwood taxpayer. An initial concern was that there was spending of a significant amount of reserve, but yet the projected budget starting point was said to be a possible decrease in taxes. The first reaction, of course, was then reduce the tax mitigation amount so there's no impact on taxes. Not that decreases in taxes are not preferred, but before doing that, any council would want to know that they are based on initiating appropriate long-term sustainable rates. If the municipal tax rate for 2019 remains the same as 2018, the average taxpayer comparison increases by 16.5% since 2015. There is a mantra out there that taxes need an annual inflationary increase or services will be negatively impacted. I don't believe that should be a steadfast approach, though for an extremely fast-growing municipality. Certainly greater than 4% per year is more than inflationary, but we know steps had to be taken to improve Collingwood's financial health, and that's been greatly accomplished. Now, with proceeds of the sale assets approaching 20 million, Collingwood is poised to be in a position to complete an all-encompassing 3 to 5 year financial plan that could include an easing of upward pressure on the taxpayer. Essentially, I would submit to Council that every effort should be made not to increase taxes for 2019. I look at the water budget plan as a microcosm of the municipal budget process. Although the water budget business plan indicates a 2.5% increase in rates for 2019, I believe Council has decided to hold at 2018 rates. Then later this year, the 5-year financial plan will be determined and long-term rate projection will be made. A similar process could be implemented for taxes and user fees. Regarding water, I continue to believe there is some subsidization by taxes. The proposed water budget expenses closely match the projection for 2019 within the 2015 to 19 strategic financial plan generated by the former Collingwood Public Utilities Service Board. As such, and since no 2019 rate increase is proposed, the full cost recovery issue can be left for the rate study discussions. This would hold true for working towards firming up asset management plans. As Director Landard noted earlier, climate control considerations must be incorporated into future planning. The upcoming completion of the stormwater asset review work could present an opportunity to segregate this component out of the general AMP. Stormwater management will be a major area that will be brought into the climate change impact analysis. Also, the Safe Drinking Water Act anticipates that it should be following the same sustainability practices as water and wastewater. I will close then with these comments, and I appreciate the hard work by Council and staff in making the best decisions possible for our municipality, like Third and High.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments from the public? Last call, Mr. Baines.
Christopher Baines, 282 Birch Street. I'm not going to discuss the 3rd Street issue tonight, although I would like to come back at that at some point. Fascinated to learn the history of this and thought-provoking. I would like to present something that's quite controversial, perhaps. I suggested this at the review of the strategic plan, and that is the terminals are such an emotional issue for so many members of this community, and I'm suggesting a 2% levy specifically reserved in a capital reserve for the terminal issues. How and what you will do in the future, who knows, and if 2% is too tough, perhaps it's 1%, but I think it would be an excellent opportunity for citizens to focus on a long-term, hopefully permanent solution to where the terminals are. And it's nothing like writing a check specifically to that, I would think so. A suggestion to council.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other public comments, then I will look to Councillor Hamlin and the deferral of $3 million attributable. Councillor Hamlin, do you have a motion or a resolution?
Yes, thank you. I would like to move that the line item relating to the improvements at Third and High be deferred to be considered again in the 2020 budget.
Have a seconder. Councillor. Councillor Doherty. Any questions or comments before I call the vote?
Yes.
Councillor Hamlin.
We've heard a lot here today from our staff. We've heard a bit from the residents, and we've certainly received a lot of emails. And I have a few thoughts, that are going through my mind. One is, I certainly feel that one of our jobs, and certainly my job, is to protect our neighborhoods. And it wasn't such an issue until we've really become a growth community. And so many of our streets are a grid pattern, straight east, west, north, south. They're very susceptible to being overrun with traffic because it's easy. And I think that we have heard here that there has been a process in 2007. It was an environmental process for whether High should be improved. And we've heard that in 2015 there was an OPA subdivision process for the regional shopping center. And I have looked at all those documents, and I have looked to the notices to the public. And I would say that what was made known at that time is that there were traffic lights being considered for Third and High. I did not see any information that this was the beginning of a diversion of a major amount of traffic from Mountain Road or potentially in the future over to 10. I have not seen anything that has raised this as something that's going to happen to our neighborhood. And I feel that we have not really had a process with our community about how we want to see our neighborhoods dealt with in terms of traffic. Do we want every street to be a through street? Do we want to protect our neighborhoods? Do we want to give our traffic engineers directions to come up with ideas to keep the traffic out of the downtown neighborhoods? We haven't, I know we have a traffic study underway, and I am sure that it's going to come back with load up Third and put a collector out to 10, because we don't give the necessary instructions to come up with alternatives because we haven't had that debate with our community. And I know that, the community that's on both sides of 3rd Street and that use 3rd and are worried about it, they're here tonight. We haven't talked to the people who, and I bet they haven't been brought into this in any major way, for Ontario Street, the people who live on the other side that are going to see the traffic. And what about the people who are living in Red Maple? What do they think about the potential for, this being almost like a bypass to take traffic away from the other major roads in our community? And I think we deserve to our community and to ourselves to make sure that we do a full analysis of how we want our community to look before we go ahead with the first step, which is putting lights in at that intersection. We have talked many times here about doing an official plan review this coming year, and we, as I understand, we will begin that process. This is a perfect time to do that kind of work, which is why I have put forward a motion to defer this matter for 1 year. Let's give ourselves at least a year to think about what we think should happen here. We have heard that, it almost sounds like an impossible task to turn the clock back. But from what I heard, I just heard 2 landowners that have been involved in this process, other than the residents that are going to be impacted. One is Home Depot, which currently has a light that comes out at High, and I suspect they were approached and said, if we take your light away, how can we sort this? And what if we put a light down at Third, a half a block away? And I bet they said, oh, that's a pretty good idea. And I bet if we went back to them and suggested, what if the light came out where it is now, would you be happy? Like, we don't know. I'm just saying, I don't want to feel like having to go back to Home Depot because we're holding some funds, which is their contribution for the lights, is some boogeyman. Because I, would hesitate to say we haven't approached them. And I asked staff about whether they've approached the developer of the regional shopping center. It may have been that when their traffic engineers were looking at how the road network should be there, they were told, oh, we've been thinking, we've got Third here as a collector, we've been thinking about lights here, just use that. Maybe that developer doesn't care where those lights are. Like, I just think we need a little time here to think about, what does all this mean? This has come up in the context of a budget discussion because we have not yet approved those intersection improvements. That's going to come next. To my mind, it's a bit out of order, but that's what we have. So we have the budget first, and then it's going to come back to us for discussion, and maybe in the interim we'll have more time. And I think Andrew Hill mentioned, what will the impact be on our neighborhood? And I have looked at that 2012 traffic study, and I think we had the discussion the other day through Councillor Doherty's questions of Director McDonald around the fact that our traffic studies just look at the major roads. They look at what's going to happen to First Street, what's going to happen to High Street, what's going to happen to Poplar, but they don't look from those major roads, what is the infiltration into the other neighborhoods, because nobody's asked them to do that. And I'm not giving fault with anyone. No one's turned their mind yet, and this will be the things that I think our community, now that it's grown and we have so many more people that have decided to revitalize these inner neighborhoods, as I'll call them, downtown neighborhoods, they are interested in this. They're interested in this. They want to know, they want to participate. And so those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod.
I want to echo a lot of the things that Councillor Hamlin has had to say, and I also want to thank all of our concerned and engaged residents for coming out tonight. I can think of so many other things I'd rather be doing on a Thursday. Happily, it's not a Sunday, and Game of Thrones isn't back, so that is good. So while I am in agreement with almost everything that that Councillor Hamlin has had to say, I also have had my mind change through the course of this evening. When we first came to the budget a few months ago, and keep in mind, 5 of us are some of us are 4? How many of us are brand new? Several of us are brand new. And saw a $3 million expenditure in the budget that was for a set of lights and a change in an intersection that hadn't, I felt, been discussed very much. I freaked out and thought, how can I justify spending this $3 million? But in the course of the last 10 or 15 days, I have realized that Third Street's designation is not about to be changed. It already is a collector road. That's just a word. We're not going to divide the highway and put the 400 down Third Street. And the developer is paying for all of this work, so that $3 million expenditure isn't truly an expenditure, it's development charges. And they're planning to build something this summer. So I think that if we defer this, we're going to halt a process, and then as a council, I believe we have a fiduciary duty not to incur costs that are going to inevitably come if we do defer it, because the developer is going to fight, and they're having had all these things passed the way that I understand, again, rookie, but the way that I understand it, they're going to win, and we're going to pay for it again. So I think there might be a way, though, to mitigate some of the concerns that I have, that you have, that Councillor Hamlin has, without breaking the bank, and that we could do some creative thinking around this table. And I really want to thank Amelia for her suggestion about the no driving through from the Cambridge/Third onto Third on the other side of High. That is one of the suggestions that I made in one of my first conversations with Councillor Hamlin about this. Why can't we just, be in charge of our own traffic flow? So I believe there is a way to mitigate everyone's concerns, and I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I can assure you we're going to do our very best to find it. But I don't want to waste your tax dollars giving it to lawyers. So that's what I have to say right now.
Councillor, any other comments? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I second this motion to get it on the table. I am also concerned specifically about deferring the money out of the budget. But I also believe that we need to have a sober second look at traffic dynamics, not only at High and Third, but throughout the community, because we are growing so rapidly and because our residents do not expect high volumes of traffic to be directed through residential neighborhoods. And I think that Councillor MacLeod has made a very good suggestion here that we explore some other alternatives to what has been proposed, because there could be many. We've heard a few suggestions tonight. We've also heard the suggestion that perhaps the light where it's positioned right now between Second and Third could stay there. But just have another look, think differently, think enlightenedly. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Saunders. I'm not going to support the deferral, and I am not going to support it for the very comment that Councillor MacLeod made, and that is respect to the fiduciary component. It is no surprise, I think, to many of you in the audience as to who the applicants are on the western side of High Street. And without prejudicing that the applicant, we know that they have been spending great sums of money over an extended period of time. The comment to whether or not you were aware, I think is very valid. The vast majority of 3rd Street has turned over numerous times since the last public meetings were held. I think that's a valid point. I think that's a valid concern. But we are still part of an ongoing planning process, and to defer this at this point, I think would be irresponsible, as I do believe that the applicant would bring, through means that are available to them, whether it be LPAT, whether it be direct litigation, etc. I'm not a solicitor, I'm just going based on past experience, and that we would be spending your good dollars after bad. And I'll just leave it at that, simply to say that I think that we have heard loud and clear the concerns as it relates to the community, the uniqueness. It's not just Third, it's all of the trade streets, it's all of the numbered streets, it's that entire neighborhood. And I think that Councillor Hamlin has spent a great deal of time engaging with many of you in terms of her concerns, the concerns that you've conveyed to her, and what you would like to see moving forward to create a complete environment, a complete community. None of us at this table ran, at least I'm not aware, as part of our platform at putting an intersection at this particular light, or a light at this particular intersection. This is an issue that has come forward, and we're dealing with it in the process in which we've been handed. And I think that the process, in this process, we have heard loud and clear last Thursday and again this evening your concerns, not only as it relates to that specific intersection, but your neighborhood as a complete neighborhood. And I do think, and if I may, to add to the complexity of the issue, we have actually heard competing viewpoints with the same end result. And that is that, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we had a deputation about a four-way intersection, putting in four-way stops. A comment was made about one of the rationale for putting in the four-way stop was that there's a sidewalk or there's a missing piece of sidewalk. And what I mean by that is just simply that we've heard from some who've said, I don't want to see change to the 3rd Street that's there today, or I want to see minimal change, or I'm in full agreement and I want to see a full change that would include sidewalks on both sides, bike lane down one lane at one side, etc., to create that sort of complete street. Councillor Doherty has a passion for cycling. She has a passion for active transportation, and I think she's made a commitment to her constituents that she would like to pursue that. And I think there has been discussion at the table about how we as a council moving forward can work with our staff in directing policy and shaping policy so that we can create that complete community, not only within your neighborhood, but as a town as a whole. When I look at the audience, with the exception of a few, the vast majority I would suggest are 20 years or newer to the community tonight. And the reason I point that out is we moved here because of quality of place, quality of life. We all get it. We all understand that to protect the quality of place and quality of life, we need to put policies in place that will protect that asset to ensure that those principles, why you moved here in the first year, or in the first place in the last 20 years, what attracted you to this community is maintained, not only for yourselves, but that next generation. So again, I echo Councillor McLeod's comments. My decision tonight, to defer this specific matter in this portion of the budget is solely based on fiduciary, our fiduciary responsibility to the complete tax base. And I will be asking our staff to then give us information as to what we may be looking at in terms of our full exposure from a liability standpoint, so that we have all of the information available to us, so that when we go through the planning process and the applicant actually brings this forward for final approval, we have all of the facts available to us at this time. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments around the table? Well, just before the call the vote, I'll make my own. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and for your emails and your participation. When you were going through the last election, one of my campaign pitches what this is: a municipal dialogue. You might not always like the decisions that are made around this table, but that doesn't mean it's a failure of democracy. This is a discussion and it's ongoing. I think you've heard some very thorough comments from my colleagues around the table about the issues that are on the table. And when a new council takes office, it doesn't start with a blank slate. It's as linear. The municipal government continues, and we inherit decisions that are made by past councils, and we inherit plans that have been put in place sometimes 15, 20 years ago. But our obligation to you is to continue to implement that through a proper process. And so the reason I will not be supporting this motion tonight is because of the process. We have to follow the process, and we have to improve ourselves moving forward. And this council is looking very hard at doing the OP review to update all of those documents. We're going to be looking at traffic calming effects. We're going to be looking at ways that we can ameliorate these types of issues throughout our community, because 3rd Street is not the only area. I came here in 2001, and I lived on St. Marie Street, just up from the Admiral Hole, and it was a vibrant school at the time, and my kids went to that school, and they had to cross Hume Street. So I know the panic you feel. And what we have to do moving forward is develop traffic calming methods and ways and planning processes that we can anticipate and direct the flow of traffic throughout the community. But in the context of trying to stop and freeze in time a process that's now 15 years in the making, to me, is not responsible government. So, having said that, I will then call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is defeated. And that concludes our agenda for tonight. Thank you very much, everyone.
No, 2 more meetings.
All right, so I'm gonna need a motion to adjourn, council. Councilor Berman. All in favor? Where's your All right, Councilor Madigan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. I just wanted to bring comment to this, and I thought it was important enough for me to write down this time rather than try to speak without writing it down. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on the budget, but more importantly, I want to speak about the council staff interaction. But budgets can be complex and sometimes very overwhelming. That being said, I really want to thank our very professional staff for all their assistance in this, as I said, very complex process. As elected officials, we are expected to be experts on everything, when in fact most times there's a very steep learning curve on every issue. I have always said from the start, it's not my job as a councillor to question the professional staff and their intelligence, but it is my job to ask questions of those professionals because they can only make me better as a councillor. And I would be remiss if I didn't make these comments regarding some of the way the questions were presented this evening in the past meetings. I found some of them a bit disrespectful and condescending, and I think we must strive to keep a very positive working relationship between staff and council. And I am hoping that the stress of the first budget is the reason for some of the negative energy. Collingwood is rated the #1 place in Canada to be, and that has something to do with our wonderful residents, fantastic amenities, and what I would say is the best municipal staff in Ontario, if not Canada. So please, let's keep moving in the positive direction and stay on the same page moving forward. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
I actually found tonight's conversation in difficult circumstances to be very respectful, so thank you all around the table. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn again. Councilor Berman. All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.